6, and Jesus says, I am the way and the truth. Let me tell you why this is so controversial. I don't know how many of you remember, but James Dotson, 70 years ago, interviewed a guy who was a serial killer. His name was Theodore Bundy. He was executed at Florida State Prison. Before he was executed, James Dobson did an interview with him. And Theodore Bundy confessed to all of his crimes. And he also confessed that he asked Jesus Christ to come into his heart. Now, I know there are a lot of people in our world today that would say, well, yeah, that was just, a jailhouse conversion. He didn't have anything to lose. But James Dobson believes his conversion was genuine. Now, I want you to put these two guys next to each other, okay? You've got a guy who has committed serial murders. He has no good works. Never went to church. Never had the opportunity, to go through all the things we go through and, check his list off, so to speak. He never, ever did that. Theodore Bundy never did that. Then you had Gandhi, who lived a life of self-sacrifice, doing good for others. One believed John 14:6, and the other didn't. That's why I say today, in our world today, there's tension with this. There's tension. Because Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And until John 3:16 becomes a part of your life, you'll never know his grace and understand that. Look at number 3. Look at the third thing. No, look at Acts chapter 17. I want to show you something because this is important. Because the next question somebody would have today would be this. Okay, I get this. Okay, preacher, you're saying he's the way, the truth. But what about those people over there in the third world countries that have never heard about Jesus? How many people have you heard, they raise that issue? What about those people that have never had a Bible and they've never had a translation? What's God going to do with those people if you're saying Jesus is the way and the truth and they don't know all of the truth? Look at Acts 17. God's got all this under control, and it's hard for some of us to imagine and comprehend this. But look, beginning in Acts chapter 17, especially verse 26. God's talking about his plan for the world and what he's doing. He says, for one man, he has made every nation of men, that means everybody came from Adam, to live, look at this, to live all over the earth, and has determined their appointed times, and look at this, and the boundaries of where they live, so that they might seek God and perhaps might reach out and find him. Now, watch this. Though he is not far from each one of us. For people today who would say, well, wait a minute. If you're saying that Jesus is the truth, what if they don't understand the truth? Did you know the Bible teaches that every person has been revealed the truth of God in some form or fashion in their life? Romans chapter 1, verse 18, notice this. It says this, and I've got to hurry. My goodness, where does the time go? For God's wrath is revealed from heaven from all godliness and unrighteousness of people. Now look at this. Who by their unrighteousness or their sinfulness suppress the truth. The Bible says, according to the book of Romans, every person who's ever been born in America, South America, they have been revealed a certain amount of truth. They either receive it or they reject it. The Bible teaches that it may be just a little bit of truth, but it's enough truth for them to come to know God. And then the Bible says God reveals himself in two ways to every person. The truth of God. First of all, he reveals himself through creation. Look at Romans chapter 1, verse 20. I can't read all these verses, but the Bible says in Romans 1, verse 20, God reveals himself, first of all, to every person on this planet through creation. How many of us can deny that one? How can you not walk outside today and not realize there's somebody bigger than we are? Somebody has put this thing together, and it's working pretty well. God says truth will be revealed to every man through creation. The Bible also says that God will reveal himself to every man through conscience. Look at Romans chapter 2. It says this in verse 15. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. Their consciences testify in support of this, and they are without excuse. You know what the Bible says? Every person, when somebody says, well, when you say that Jesus says, I am the way and the truth, and there are people who don't know the truth. The Bible says every person knows enough of the truth. Creation, your own conscience. Folks, that's why no matter where you go in this world, everybody knows it's wrong to commit murder, right? You don't need a book of laws to tell you that. God has placed that. And here's maybe the greatest evidence of that. You can go to any part of the world today where people have never had the Bible and they live good, moral lives. How do they do that? Because God has written that on their heart. So for the person today who says, I refuse to believe because of the arrogance of Christianity, you say, I am the way, I am the truth. And then the last thing he says, I am the life. Jesus says, you will never have real life until you know me. And then he gets real specific. And I know this kind of rubs some of us the wrong way, but notice what he says. No one, I think that means everybody, no one comes to the Father except through me. It's a roadblock. It's a roadblock. Dr. Ravi Zacharias, who is one of the most intellectual guys around today, who spends his life on college campuses, traveling the world, now he's debating from a different perspective. Let me tell you his story. He was 17. His, quote, mom and dad claimed to be believers, but they really didn't act like Christians, so he wasn't really impressed with Christianity. His life story is when he was 17, he went to hear some preacher preach, and the preacher said, well, if you come down front and you'll do this, then you'll be saved. And so he did that, and he thought he was. Unfortunately, that's the story of so many people who have been kind of raised in church, that they did something, but they're not sure what they did. So at 17, he's in high school. Brilliant, has an IQ, he's a genius. But he's so miserable at 17 that he decides he's going to commit suicide. Nobody around him has any idea how empty he really is. It looks like he has a good life. He's in India. His mom and dad are doing pretty well. But he's empty. So he goes to the science lab at his high school, breaks in, gets all these poisons, pours them into a glass of water, drinks the water, and in a few moments he's on his knees and he's dying. He's dying. And one of his friends somehow finds him, and they rush him to the hospital in India. And somehow they're able to pump all this stuff out of his stomach, and he lives through this event. Dr. Zacharias today said that there's somebody walked in to his hospital room after going through all of that suffering. Remember, he had all the roadblocks. I mean, he saw Christianity, and he saw Muslims, and he saw Buddhism, and he saw all that stuff. And he just, he just couldn't connect. Somebody walked into his hospital room and quoted John 14:6. He said, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. Dr. Zacharias said at that moment, he understood John 3:16. And he asked Christ into his life, fresh and anew.